My name is Anthony Lloyd. I'm 18 years old and I attend Bard High School Early College in Baltimore. I am also a community organizer and a student leader with The Intersection, a Baltimore-based nonprofit. I grew up in Patterson Park, a neighborhood in East Baltimore where drug deals are common. My mom fought to make sure that I had everything I needed to be successful. But growing up with a working single parent meant that I had to rely on my school to support me. Unfortunately, my schools were neither nurturing nor supportive. Like many other students you teach, my relationship with education has been difficult. I used to be the bad kid in middle school. You guys are all teachers. I'm sure each of you can think of those 2 or 3 students. Each of you can think of those 2 or 3 students you hope might not show up in class because your class goes so much smoother when they're not there. Know what I'm talking about? That used to be me. I spent class time talking to my peers, and since I've always been a natural leader, I would often corrupt the entire class into derailing a lesson. Yes, I was that kid. I never did my homework. I wandered the halls when I was bored. When adults tried to talk to me, I would pretend to give them my attention. Then when they seemed really invested into disciplining me, I would turn on my heels and walk away. I acted like I didn't care about my education, so I was treated like I didn't belong in school. At the start of my 7th grade year, I was determined to turn it around. When I expressed my new resolutions, the teachers smiled and shook their heads, not believing me. I felt discouraged before I even started. On top of having to tame my own impulses, I faced the mistrust and the low expectations of everyone around me. My assigned seat was always at the front of the class, isolated between people teachers thought I'd be less likely to talk to. If a paper ball was thrown, I was automatically the culprit. Every day, I was sent out of class for one reason or another. I couldn't get a clean slate no matter how hard I tried. In their eyes, I would always be the bad kid. When I was 12 years old, my father was sentenced to 12 years in prison for armed robbery. My single mother struggled to raise and provide for her 3 boys. My dad was in jail, my mom was always at work, and my school didn't believe in me. Everything around me suggested that I was not supposed to succeed, that I was not even supposed to exist. I started making bad choices. I started looking to the streets for support, and I participated in things I never should have. I traded a good conscience for a sense of protection. I couldn't get the love and support that I needed in my house, and I couldn't get the love and support that I needed in my streets, in my school. But the streets, on the other hand, welcomed me with open arms. It was easy to feel accepted in the streets. I was surrounded by people who had all messed up at some point in their lives. So my shortcomings were no biggie. There was always a place for me, a smart boy with a clean record who the police wouldn't suspect of any crime. But the streets are well known for chewing people's lives up and spitting them back out. One night I watched a man get shot and die in front of a supermarket. He was running down the street when seconds later, bang, his knees buckled and he fell to the ground, blood pouring from his head while his once white polo shirt turned cherry Kool-Aid red. That night changed my life. Was my freedom worth more than some drugs? Was my life worth more than a bullet? It had to be. I knew that if I didn't want to end up behind bars or lying dead in the street, I needed to change my habits. I needed to disassociate myself from the negative influences in my life. Knowing how critical education is to success, I decided to apply to Bard High School Early College, a competitive school that will allow me to graduate with an associate's degree and 60 college credits in addition to my high school diploma. Bard changed my relationship with education. For the first time, learning was more than memorizing a textbook. It was about thinking critically about the world around me. For the first time, I have a relationship with my teachers who support me and believe in me, not based on my track record, but because of my potential. For the first time, I feel affirmed and accepted for who I am. I feel loved and cared for. 2 months after I joined the school, I was elected president of the Student Government Association. Today, I am proud to mentor other students who grew up without role models and who stumbled onto the wrong path. In addition to impacting my community, I knew that I wanted to be a part of something bigger. I wanted youth in Baltimore to have more opportunities than I had, and I wanted to play a role in creating those opportunities. So I joined a civic leadership organization called the Baltimore Intersection. The organization gave me a space to think critically and contextualize my own challenges within the larger struggle for justice. It is a place where I can develop ideas and implement them in the field as a youth leader. My intersection peers and I have developed community organizing skills to advocate for changes within our city. We met with mayoral candidates and city councilmen and women to persuade them to vote in favor of the Children and Youth Investment Act, an initiative that plans to allocate $11 million to youth services in Baltimore. After my peers and I testified at City Hall in favor of the bill, it passed without opposition. It passed again when we managed to convince the City Council to overturn the mayor's veto, which hasn't happened in Baltimore since 1982. This past summer, the intersection's student leaders knocked on close to 1,000 doors in Baltimore, registering voters and motivating citizens to vote for the bill on November 8th. We spoke to hundreds of citizens across Baltimore, collecting their input on how these youth funds should be distributed. In the midst of this incredibly tense election season, we managed to unify our Baltimore residents under one issue: the need for more investment and more resources for young people. Working with the intersection has made me feel part of a movement of leaders striving for a better Baltimore. It strengthened my voice and taught me how to advocate not only for myself, but for others. Our collective power as youth organizers could not have been achieved without the incredible staff members of the intersection. Most of them Teach for America alums who fiercely believe that students should be leading their communities to create the change that they most need to see. As Teach for America Corps members and alumni, each of you has the opportunity and the responsibility to positively impact your students' trajectory. Educators, I'm asking you to see your students for what they can be and not just for what they appear to be. I'm asking you to look at your students for what they can become and not for what statistics show they will be. Last year in Baltimore, we lost 344 lives to gun violence. More than 90% of the homicide victims were boys and men, and more than 90% of them were black. Out of those 344 lives, some of them might have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others have probably turned to the streets like me and found a bullet instead of opportunity. Think about those 2 or 3 kids who might not seem to care about their education, those who make your job easier when they're not there. Can you picture one of those students becoming student government president and mentoring other students? Can you imagine them testifying at City Hall and advocating for a major piece of legislation? Can you picture those students on this stage today? Teachers, you need to. Their success and their livelihoods depend on it. If you look at your black and brown students and you can't imagine them as the next president of the United States, then you are failing them. A child cannot be what a child cannot see. And children cannot see themselves succeeding if their teachers don't fiercely believe that they will succeed. Look at your students like they're brilliant and they will shine. Look at your students like they're groundbreakers and they'll innovate. Look at your students like champions and they'll rise. Thank you.